All right, thank you for staying with us. And the conversation right now is about the rejigging, call it the reshuffling. Some might say maybe a restructuring of the cabinet because it has to do with a lot of things. Now, for the exigency of time, I will just be very brief. And the statement that was released on the restructuring of ministries and ministerial portfolios. That was the word used by the State House, by the way. And he said the President, TINUBU, Bola Tinubu G7, has approved the immediate implementation of 8 far-reaching actions to reinvigorate the administration's capacity for optimal efficiency pursuant of his commitment to deliver on his promises to Nigerians. And the 8 actions approved by Mr. President include the renaming of the Ministry of Niger Delta Development to Ministry of Regional Development to oversee the activities of all the regional development commissions. The regional development commissions to be under the supervision of the new ministries are the NDDC, Niger Development Commission, the Southeast Development Commission, the Northeast Development, and the Northwest Development Commissions. 2. The immediate winding up of the Ministry of Sport Development and the transfer of its functions to the National Sports Commission in order to develop a vibrant sport economy. The merger of the Federal Ministry of Tourism and the Federal Ministry of Art and Culture, to become Federal Ministry of Art, Culture, Tourism, and the Creative Economy. 4. The reassignment of 10 ministers to new ministerial portfolios, the discharge of 5 ministers, the nomination of 7 new ministers for onward transmission to Senate for confirmation. Evelyn, may I continue?
And of course, 6, the nomination of 7 ministers, new ministers for onward transmission to the Senate for confirmation. 7, the appointment of Shehu Diko as chairman of the National Sports Commission. And the 8th, the appointment of Sunday Akindare as special advisor to the President in Public Communication and Orientation, working from the Ministry of Information and National Orientation.
Really, some of these, ministers that were dropped are there, and some others, were reassigned. Those dropped or to be discharged, according to the statement, are Barrister Uju Keno Aneye, Minister of Women Affairs, Lola Adejon, Minister of Tourism, Professor Tahid Mamman San, OON, Minister of Education, Abdullah Mohamed Guazo, Minister of State, Housing and Urban Development, and Dr. Jamila Bio Ibrahim, Minister of Youth Development. And we have some that now have a new designation as Minister. Minister Senator John Owan Eno, Minister of Sport before. The new ministry is the Ministry of State and Trade Investment. I said many of these things we'll say it when we get to the talking point. Now, reshuffling, the rejigging, the scrapping of some ministries and the subsuming of other MDAs and all of these development that we have since yesterday, and the appointment of new ministers as well. What does it mean? To give us a sense of these, we are being joined this morning by the Director General at the Heritage Center in Abuja and, of course, a public affairs analyst, Dr. Katch Ononuju. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Let's go straight into it. What is your general impression of this development from the Federal Executive Council?
Oh, well, I would say it's a positive move. This is very different from Buhari's tenure. Under Buhari, there were no interrogations as we've had now. And of course, it makes sense that when you appoint people who came to you, not because you know them, but they were given to you and suggested to you, the president, by party hands and party chieftains and party stakeholders as fit to be appointed. And then after appointing them, you now find out that there are questions about their capacity to do the job the way you, the appointee, actually expect them to do it. So that's the right thing you do. You now change them bring new hands on, and then you take it from there. I also commend the calibration of the Ministry of Intervention Affairs to now become a holistic ministry for intervening in every place where there is a need for this kind of intervention, even though there are needs to blur lines. So yes, let us now say that is an intervention ministry for places that are challenged. But let's see how it goes. Let it not become another de facto competitor to the Ministry of Works, because a lot of these interventions also had to do with construction and bringing areas up to speed where we think a lot of government interventions have not occurred. So let's keep watching. The best I can say is we should continue to watch and continue to expect that this government can listen to people. And it is through listening to people, gaining good feedback, that you see this kind of interventions occur. And then you see a rejig, which is very different from Buhari. And whatever it is, let's just remember Buhari was just a nightmare. Never should such a thing ever befall any country again. So let's look at what this is and then what it brings. For me, it's nothing new. It's the government. The government, it's wanting to appoint people. But the real game is for all of us to understand that when fish goes bad, it rots from the head. The government should, on its own, listen to what the World Bank has said. It is through examples of government that the ministers will follow. It is through the behaviors of the government, the people at the head, that the subordinates who are appointed will now understand certain things are not tolerated, and certain things will not be allowed, and certain behaviors should not even be embraced. So what I'm saying is the TINUBU administration has to, on its own, become prudent on its own. When it is prudent, and also understanding that governance is for the whole of the country, and we should eschew nepotism as Buhari practiced it. Continuing from where Buhari stopped doesn't mean you should embrace the dirty, destructive, treasonous behaviors of Buhari, like weaponizing nepotism. It should be in Nigeria, where everybody should find their aspirations given some quality of care by government, and not just caring only for the aspirations of some sections of people and not for others. Let everybody have an honest sense of inclusion in the process of nation building. Let any group not feel that state capture is their birthright, and so they can treat the country as they wish, and damn the consequences, no matter the questioning from other places, which is exactly what Buhari did, him and his group. And that was why you saw people asking if TINUBU truly is continuing, or does he want to copy Buhari's ways? So let's see what this is. This doesn't change anything. Okay, these calibrations are simply intentions towards putting new people into old positions. And yes, the rejigging of the ministries in bringing the Ministry of Intervention to be holistic intervention from around the country, not just intervention to one place. You know, that's another thing. So I think in the same state, it should merge the Ministry of Livestock into Ministry of Agriculture. Let it not be a political pronouncement as if it targets that group. No, bring the Ministry of Livestock into the Livestock Department of the Agriculture Ministry. So let's not just consolidate on only one part. No, markets should consolidate everywhere for us to actually have an honest sense of what we're doing.
Yes, quickly, because we're going to take it one after the other. Let's talk about the timing. Doctor, 14 months after, many persons were thinking it was going to be early, especially at that, conference that was hard for the ministers when they were coming in. And, that performance thing that he had to sign, performance. And, there was a class captain that was even appointed, Adiza Bala, to say you have to monitor the progress, who is performing, who needs some, nudging, or the person that needs to be dropped, maybe year after year. But now it has taken like 14 months, 429 days after the appointment before this particular call was done. Would you say that really the timing was perfect, or it could have just happened at any time?
Well, I think the issue of timing is left to the president himself to think how long it takes him to understand what he wants to understand. If you bring new players to a pitch, some people will simply see 1-2 flaws and they make up their mind. Some will want to see more before they can actually draw their own conclusion. So the issue of timing is left to the eyes that see. Right. An eye could use 2 hours to notice something very good in a performer. Another eye could probably use just 30 minutes and we notice the particular traits that are sought for in a particular person. And they will just say, stop, I've seen what I'm looking for. Do this, do that, do this, do that. Secondly, if you're talking about a class captain to look at what, a lot is still going wrong. Buhari is a policy of looking the other way, whereas murderous outsiders cleanse Nigerians of ancestral lands is still going on. The army that colluded, in the words of General Danjuma, and I agree with him, the army that colluded with those who were killing people have not yet been rejigged. So that's why I said, Jan Lagbaja, what have you done? That army that colluded with Buhari's people to kill Nigerians on an industrial scale across the north.
The army is the famous, one of the famous peacekeeping, formations of the government. So when you say they are colluding, that's a strong word, isn't it?
Yes, yes. I restate that because I also see that to be a fact. So when General Danjuma said the army was colluding, that was the truth well known by a lot of us. The army were colluding with those who were ethnically cleansing Nigerians, and that was why the army was looking the other way and could not save Nigerians from places like Katsina, Zamfara, Sokoto, Benue, Nasarawa, Niger, Plateau. Nigerians were being killed en masse. The army that was colluding with those who were performing such ethnic cleansing on industrial scale. I've not seen the class captain do anything or say anything about the continuation of those industrial scale ethnic cleansings in Benue, in Plateau, in Niger State, in Sokoto, in Katsina, in Zamfara. I have not seen anybody do anything to reject the army. I don't think we should tolerate an army that colludes. Yes, you had me collude. I'm borrowing the word from General Danjuma. Danjuma knows what he's saying. I attended last month the army get-together where Danjuma was invited for the first time in a long time. Under Buhari, he was seen as a persona non grata, but under the present leadership, he was invited and I was there. And I'm happy when he told them, you can fight to stop this industrial scale ethnic cleansings and this violence being visited against Nigerians by people who don't speak any Nigerian languages. Most of them were caught speak Bambara and French. We should stop this and return farmers back to their ancestral lands, back to their farms. Let's not allow Nigerians to be kept in IDP camps, whereas foreigners now occupy their ancestral lands. The army that kept quiet and looked the other way were colluding. and I believe their Danjumas words to be true. They were colluding because I had said such on television, the army had not done anything. So that class captain should look. And that class captain is not a correct class captain because she, due to her tribal affiliation, will not be able to point this out to the president because the people who were seen to be doing the ethnic cleansings are from the tribe of this class captain you're talking about. So that's why I pinpointed this particular issue. If you talk about the class captain and the class captain's people are seen to be performing ethnic cleansings in intentions towards getting ancestral land to resettle refugees from Mali, from Burkina Faso, from Central African Republic, whereas indigenous owners of such ancestral land are headed into IDP camps. Such things are not tolerated. So let me say it, that I'm disappointed that nothing was done to actually show that the army that was colluding has not yet been rejected to stop such collusion to occur so that we can stop the killings in Benue, killings in Plateau, killings in Nasarawa, killings in Niger State.
Dr. Katch.
Yes.
All right. When you talk about the insecurity, that will be under the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of State for Defense. And, according to the announcements made, nothing was done about that particular ministry. We still have the minister intact, the two ministers, Minister of Defense and the Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawale, Minister of Defense, Badaro, still intact there. And, Adisabala Mohammed, Adisabala Usman is the special advisor to the President on policy and coordination. And she's just heading the central delivery for the ministers to deliver on the KPIs, which brings me to this question. Do you think the ministers that were dropped, the 5 ministers that were dropped based on a non-performance, based on the fact that they were not able to deliver on their KPIs?
Well, that's exactly why I raised that question. I was thinking about the KPI, and that's why I said, why weren't anything done in the Ministry of Defense when they had not been able to curtail the industrial scale ethnic cleansings? Now, I do not know the criteria that Hadiza used in recommending those changes without recommending changes at the Ministry of Defense. And that's why I pinpointed the activities of the Ministry of Defense. If those soldiers who were colluding with those who were killing Nigerians are still colluding and Nigerians are still being killed, why was nothing done about appointments at the Ministry of Defense? That's exactly what I'm saying. So if she had made recommendations that these people be changed, why has there been no changes if, in my suspicions, the collusion still continue? What Jaron Danjuma said is true. It's real.
Dr.
And that's why
Katch,
I asked, because the number one problem at the last election,
Dr. Katch, if I may butt in here,
yes,
where at least from this end, are not privy to our recommendations. Maybe those, that particular ministry and those ministers, Badarum, 2 of them former governors, by the way, the Minister of Defense, Badaru, the Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawale, former Zamfara governors. Maybe, just maybe, Adisabala's work as in that regard is to recommend, is to see to the KPI. It is the president that makes the decision. She doesn't make the decision. So why should we blame her?
I'm not blaming her. I'm simply saying whatever decisions that led to the changes and the removal of the ministers that were removed, probably I would not know it. As you rightly pointed out, we are not privy to the recommendations, nor the protocols used for gauging who's to be removed and who's not to be removed. So until we understand what informed the reasons for the changes, we wouldn't be able to say. But what I'm pointing out is that if we have had a continuation of the insecurity, which by 57% was the most serious problem of the country going into the last election, and this security seems to have persisted, why has the ministers been left there? Something should have happened there to show that the president really wants some changes. Not even the other minister that was involved in the scandals where Bello Turji was saying the minister is in contact with him or whatever. I don't think anybody in contact with terrorists, bandits, whatever you call them, should be kept in government. But whatever it is, I believe the president also has his back channels of cross-checking. My own is to look at the insecurity. By any standard you say, what Buhari gave to this country on a scale that's unmatched was insecurity. And I believe a lot of that was perpetrated through the instrumentations of state. You can see, look at the East. Since Buhari left, the unknown government sting operation had finished, had ended, has been over, telling you about government involvement in some of these things. And that's what leads me back to what Abacha said, that the insecurity in a violent form sustains for more than 48 hours, the government has a hand in it. And that's, so the minute Buhari left, the unknown government sting operation ended in the East. I remembered Abacha, and I told myself, this is true. So whatever it is, we thank TINUBU for not continuing some of those treasonous policies that Buhari pursued, you know. But whatever it is, Nigeria seems to be in a better place today. The only problem we have is the sociological reactions to the economic decisions of government, which have been seen to be very, very stringent. But I think on the long term, we'll all get too used to it. I do not see anything that permanently too much. I can see that consumption, daily consumption of fuel has actually dropped by more than 75%. And that, for me, tells you that a lot of the fuel that is reported to be consumed in Nigeria were actually being removed and being shipped out. And a lot, nobody consumes, nobody takes, is just being reported fraudulently by the NNPC, which is another thing I will have to comment on. How come nothing happened at NNPC? These changes are so cosmetic. If under Mele Kyari, we have seen fraudulent report of numbers, and even the current crisis right now, where the private investors are not being allowed to actually bring down prices, how come we're still having prices built up and calculated based on fictitious add-ons like Dumerate charge, like charges on storage in high seas, like, you know, things that just do not make sense, things that were actually added when we were importing petroleum. So Dr. now that we are beginning to use local petrol, unless we're not yet using local petrol. And that's why what we're insisting, let the prices be determined by those who go to buy from Dangote, if Dangote has ability to supply the needs of the country.
All right, Dr. Katch, let's talk to the scrapping of ministries. That announcement came with scrapping of two ministries, the Ministry of Niger Delta and the Ministry of Sports Development. The Ministry of Sports Development now, you know, duties and events under that ministry will now be taken over by the National Sports Commission, and the Ministry of Niger Delta will now be under a new ministry, or that ministry has been scrapped, but events under that particular ministry, works under that particular ministry will be carried out by a new ministry, which is the Ministry of Regional Development, which has been created to oversee all regional development commissions, which include the Niger Delta Development Commission, the Northwest Development Commission, Southeast Development Commission, Southwest Development Commission, Northeast Development Commission. One would say, where's the North Central Development Commission? But for now, it's just the 5 Regional Development Commission. How do you react to that? Being that, you know, the citizens asked for a leaner cabinet, they feel the cabinet of Mr. President is overbloated, and they wanted the president to actually scrap the ministry, merge the ministry. People were looking forward to the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction to be scrapped, the Ministry of Livestock Development to be under the Agricultural Ministry of Agriculture, but we didn't see any one of that. We only saw the scrapping of 2 ministries and the merging of the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Culture and Creative Economy now to become the Ministry of Arts, Culture, Tourism, and creative economy. How do you react to that?
I will tell you that this is a work in progress. Well, if you're complaining about him rejigging about 10 ministries or 15, and he starts by rejigging 3 or 4, that simply means he could be working on how to do the other rejigs. I don't think that the Ministry of Niger Delta was scrapped, no. I think it was recalibrated and made to become a full ministry for interventions. So, and if the interventions are not only to occur in the Niger Delta, there are interventions in other parts of the country. So you have Niger Delta.
This has actually raised concerns or raised some dust among the Niger Delta who have rejected the Niger Delta ministry to be scrapped. I believe Niger Delta Development Commission should be a lone, commission on its own. It shouldn't be joined with other regional development commissions. They should have their own development commission.
Well, government may also have its intentions for this move, putting all the eggs in one basket. It could be as a way to whittle down the Niger Deltas will take. And if all of them are created on the same criteria of taking something by law off the federation account, a given percentage, is the same. You take those things to intervene in infrastructure and other things. So, so far, the ministries that were seen before were being mismanaged. So if it becomes a full federal ministry where we can now see what's going on, I don't see anything that's wrong with that. We don't have to make everything one for each person before we will understand all of them are the same thing. It is all intervention ministry. And then intervention work can be done centrally. But you see, what the people of Niger Delta are saying, I'm from the Niger Delta, we are saying, let the putting of everything in the same bag not force a loss of focus. Some people also may think that they have strong grip on these ministries, and if you now make it a national intervention agency, they may not have the kind of grip that they had before on it. So let's see how this works out. What I know is that from the action so far, the government seemed to want to actually bring down the number of ministries it has. And that's why we are asking questions of if the game is downsizing and trying to put everything in the same bag, why are you leaving the Ministry of Livestock outside the Ministry of Agriculture? So there are a lot of things to be brought in under the Transport Ministry. So let us just say this is just the beginning of a very long day. That's what I say this. I take this as morning on a very long creation day. So I do not see this as an end in itself. No, I see this as a beginning. And so let's see how it works out. If a ministry of Niger Delta being merged now with development commissions of other places, I can tell you that is the same intervention that all of them will do. So instead of sharing the intervention into 20 places, make it one bulk national body, and then let us work from there and see how it works.
Okay, let's talk about the individual ministers that were dropped. Let's speak to their personality and what they were able to bring on board during the, 12 months or thereabouts that they were in office. Barrister Oju Ken Ohaneye, Women Affairs, Lola Adejon of Tourism, Professor Tahir Maman, SAN of Education, Abdullahi Muhammad Gwazo of Housing and Urban Development, that's Ministry of State, and Dr. Jamila Bio Ibrahim, Ministry of Youth Development. These 5 individuals that headed these ministries, now they are now referred to as former ministers because they have been discharged of their duties. What do you make? Do you think there is anyone that was, wrongly dropped or that should not have made this list?
It
or
is not
anyone
for me.
that isn't here that you think should have been dropped?
It is not for me to start interrogating the criteria for their judgments. But I can tell you that those dropped were dropped by those who appointed them. So it's nothing big for me. They probably were received from who gave them to the president with conditions. You suggest this person, I will appoint the person. I hope she is able to perform or he's able to perform. If they do not perform, then this is exactly what you see that comes from it. So it's not for us to make such judgments. It is for the president and those that he collected these people from to be able to make these judgments. I do not know the reasons for their judgments. I do not know the standards for judging performance that he has used in doing these changes. And that's why I asked my own, how come glaring places like insecurity, where the insecurity have persisted, why haven't we seen actions? So let us leave it at that and see what comes from this.
All right. Quickly, let's look at, the spread of the appointment. For some that were dropped, Uju Kennedy on there, obviously from the southeast, Lolade John from the south, Tai Maman from the north, Guazol from the north, Bio Ibrahim from the north. Those are appointed now. Senator Netanwe Yitwada, Mohammed Dingyadi, by the way, served as Minister in charge of Police Affairs under Buhari from the north, Bianca Odumegu Ojugu from the southeast, Jumoke Oduwole from the southwest, Idi Mukhtar and Yusuf Atta and Suwaiba Ahmed, all of them from the north. When you look at the spread of those dropped and the spread, national spread of those that have been appointed, will you say it is fair? Because you talked about nepotism, that used to be the order of the day under Buhari. Do you think this is a sharp departure and the spread now is showing federal character?
Well, what I can tell you is that this is their way. And so for me...
How do you mean their way?
It's the APC way.
Okay.
Under Buhari, the APC decided to do checks and balances. Under President TINUBU, the APC has been more proactive and right hands-on. So we'll simply have to judge and contrast the two styles. So for me, what I would say is that let us watch. This is just the beginning of a very long process. We had Buhari for 8 years and there were no changes. And the only time when there was a change was when people resigned after the party primaries, after 8 years. So if during TINUBU we've had change this early, and then people are beginning to read also some meanings to it, I wouldn't. It's only later on I want to digest when the real truth about what drove his decisions are revealed, then we'll begin to start to put, the crosses to the T's and the dots to the I's. But for now, I will tell you, these are people who were suggested to the president simply by party stakeholders.
All right.
And the president has now made his decision based on either the character trails or from the position he's standing and looking at them, because you could be looking at Ujo Haneye from a different perspective, and then you'll see a different woman from what another person who's looking from the top will be seeing. And that's the same thing for other people. So it's a good thing that we even have a system now in place that can look at people and say, look, this person is cantankerous. That person, no beyond. Let them go. Let's have new people. There's nothing wrong with that. As they go, in line with the federal character representation, the people who change them also come from their states. So I don't really see anything big about that. It's the same musical chairs.
All right. You know, the key word that was used by that presidential State House release was that the president, you know, has reinvigorate, and it has taken far-reaching action to reinvigorate the administration's capacity for optimal efficiency pursuant of his commitment to deliver on his promises to Nigerians. That was the words they used. But then, Nigerians are people who are big in governance. We say you can't take away political exigencies as well. Who is bringing what to the table? What is the political weight of this person? Is he able to garner support? Because many persons say maybe leave it or take it. The race for 2027 might have started maybe clandestinely, but then what really matters to Nigerians right now is having food on their table, having their lives and property secured. Nigerians, we say, give us a good environment to work. We can work. Don't even give us fish. We can fish for ourselves, but let the parameters, economic parameters, be good. These policies of the government is choking us. And please, can you change some of these persons that are now working? But for you, you have said, if there is any ministry that should have been rejected, a minister's dropped, you think that's the Ministry of Defense, in which nothing has been done. Now, looking at political exigency, looking at performance, looking at maybe one eye on the 2037 election, or the yearnings of the people for a change in the cabinet, will you say right now that President TINUBU is really about reinvigorating the will of governance and getting the best out of the people that is working with him, knowing fully well that nothing is really working right now economically?
You can't say nothing is really working. A lot is working.
The statistics are there, doctor. Inflation is at all-time rate. People can really feed. The purchasing power is at an all-time low. Nigerians are not seeing it that way.
People can really feed. I agree with you. That's because the people remain docile for the 8 years of the Buhari presidency.
You are still blaming the Buhari government for whatever this government is doing.
When it came to time to vote, people allowed themselves to be intimidated with bigotry and preachings about tribe and religion. If you do nothing when it is time for action, don't spend anything when it is time for payments. You must do something when it is time for you to act, for you to be able to gain something when it is time for you to receive. So if Nigerians sat back, kept quiet, and then the election was stolen the way it was, and when we asked, they said it's a glitch. The company that hosted the server, Amazon, said there was no glitch. So we now had what we had, and the things that we got were not put upon us. Why would you complain if you didn't complain that time? So Kuku, live with it and accept your fate the way it is. The biggest problems and arguments in society since TINUBU's taking over from Buhari are economic. And the people who were changed have nothing to do with the economy. So those who make the economic decisions and the ministries where they are, Wale and the man at the central bank are still there. They were not changed. So that's the people that run the monetary policy and the people who run the fiscal policy. Those two people are still in position. So why would you tell me that the change is to reinvigorate? It's not to reinvigorate anything. These are just cosmetic issues. The complaints across the country are complaints about the harsh economic realities.
Right.
Where anybody change on the economic team, my answer is no. So the president feels okay. And if you really ask me, what advice I want the president to take is the advice given to the president by the World Bank. They should lead by example, moderate their spending, show a little bit, responsibility by being frugal. If you're not prudent with public spending, then the ministers underneath you will not be prudent. But if you're prudent and they believe that is the way of the government, the ministers with you will also follow the way of government because you've set a good example for them.
All right.
But when you don't set good example for the ministers, they will do just the same thing that they think they have learned from the presidency. And everything will just go haywire. So my own advice is not issue of cabinet changes, which are inevitable if the president thinks certain persons must be removed from certain positions for new blood to be injected. The most important thing is to lead by example. And the people who lead are the executives. So if the executive leads properly, I believe the rest of the appointed people will behave themselves and follow suit. Apart from that, we're not going to get anywhere.
All right, Public Affairs Analyst and DG, the Heritage Center, Abuja, Dr. Katch Ononuju. Thank you so much for coming on board this morning and, sharing with us your thoughts and submissions on the topic of discourse. It's always a pleasure to have you on board on this show.
I thank you very much for having me.
All right, have for yourself a productive day.
Right.
That's the conversation. If you've listened or watched Dr. Katch, is big on security.
Yeah,
and it feels that as a country, we should actually be more concerned, more interested and invested in getting our security right, because that is the foundation of development. That is the foundation of economic growth for any nation. And I hope that those at the M of Affairs can actually listen to that and ensure that our security architecture is intact. That's the show this morning. Thank you for joining us. You can watch a recap of the show on our YouTube channel at Western Spring TV. Connect with us on other social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and X at Western Spring Television. My name is Evelyn Ohiolei. Stay tuned for Spring Trends coming right after this broadcast.
And of course, I quite agree with you with the submission of Dr. Katch to say if there's any ministry at all that should have been reshuffled, rejigged, and the ministers, dropped, it should have been the defense. And quite so as well. Femi Ojo is man, and this is an ongoing conversation. Trust us to always speak truth to power and to have conversations that has to do with the betterment of the nation. On behalf of Evelyn and I want to thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.